All right, folks, we just opened up the box of our Minn Kota Ulterra QUEST, laid everything out in front of us, and I'm going to show you everything that was inside of that box. Obviously, we have the trolling motor itself. We have the MKR MI1 sonar adapter cable, and this will allow us to convert our 14-pin built-in sonar to a helix unit. We have an Ethernet extension cord. We have the foot pedal, the prop, the wireless remote control and lanyard. We have a hardware pack, and most importantly, we have our installation and user's guide. Another thing I'd like to mention, and this is an optional purchase and not included in the box of the trolling motor, is a circuit breaker called the MKR27. Always should have some sort of circuit protection between your batteries and the actual trolling motor power supply, whether it's receptacle on the boat, or if you're hardwiring it to wires that are already buried in the boat, you should have some sort of protection right off your battery. This MKR27 circuit breaker has gone through rigorous testing from Minn Kota to service the power needs for this Ulterra QUEST. Included in the information packet is our Ulterra QUEST installation instructions, our wireless remote quick reference guide, which is two-sided and waterproof, our One Boat Network app and advanced GPS navigation wireless remote instructions. We have a laminated two-sided page for an emergency stow procedure. If you have any issues out on the water, you'll be able to follow these instructions step by step and get your trolling motor out of the water so you can get the boat back on the trailer. There's also a quick start guide which has 4 very important steps needed to complete the installation of your trolling motor. On page 6 of the installation manual, you'll find the tools and resources required to perform the installation of the Minn Kota Ulterra QUEST. A number 3 Phillips screwdriver, a drill, a 3/8 drill bit, an awl or similar marking tool, a 9/16 opened box end wrench, a 9/16 deep well socket, and a second person to help you with lifting the motor on the front of the boat. So when positioning the Ulterra QUEST, there's a couple things we need to take into consideration. Number 1, you'll notice on the aluminum extruded base plate, there's a notch cut into that. We want that notch just slightly past flush with the gunnel of the boat. That way when the motor is deployed, the bottom end of this drive housing is going to clear the boat. The other thing we need to be aware of is that the control box or the head of this motor is inside of the gunnel of the boat. That way it'll prevent any accidental strikes or damages from dock posts, docks, boat lifts, or even other boats. So we have everything where we want it, positioned right. We're going to go ahead and pull off these 2 side plates. With that, you just need a number 3 Phillips screwdriver and remove 2 screws from each side. We'll just remove the 2 side plates and we'll set them aside to reinstall them after a trolling motor is mounted. So the side plates are off. We're going to go ahead and take a magic marker and mark the holes that are pre-drilled into the base of this aluminum extruded. So we're going to go ahead and mark these holes. And if you do refer to the installation instructions, Minn Kota recommends that you use all 6 pre-drilled holes in the base of the motor to fasten to the boat. So we have those marked. We're going to slide the motor out of the way and drill our holes. Before you drill, it's always a good idea to reach underneath the bow and just make sure there's no obstructions, whether it be a wire or cable ties or any other fasteners. Just make sure you're free and clear so you don't damage anything. So I just did, we're good. We're going to go ahead and punch these holes up. A couple things I'd like to mention is there's 2 additional options for mounting this thing. Number 1 is the MKA58, which is a reinforcing bracket. Because of the substantial thrust of these new QUEST motors, that bracket distributes that weight a little bit more evenly across this boat and also give you more purchasing power when you're mounting it to the boat. The other option is the quick release bracket. Put it on the boat. If you're going to go out on the water for fun, you can simply pop that motor off, set it aside, set it in the back of your car, in the garage, or whatever it is, and then go out and spend your day on the water. So we just opened up a hardware pack and laid it on the deck, and we'll go through it with you. There's some rubber spacers or washers or a rubber shim, however you want to term it. There's 6 backup plates. We got 6 fasteners and 6 nylocks. The rubber bumpers or washers are used if your deck plate is uneven. You might need to use these to shim up the boat. In this instance, Our boat deck is flat, but we have these structural fasteners holding the actual top of the bow down to the gun of the boat. So we're gonna actually use these things just to get the base of our motor up a little bit so we clear the factory fasteners that were installed. Also in the hardware pack was a small tube of anti-seize. Use this generously on the actual fasteners and preload the nuts just to prevent any gulling or seizing up of the fasteners to the bolts when you're tightening everything up. So we'll go ahead and do that right now. I'll put some on each bolt and just work it in with my finger. And then we'll preload each nylock with some anti-seize as well. So we have our fasteners all gooped up with some anti-seize. Next thing I like to do is take a screwdriver and line the base plate of the trolling motor up with the holes we drilled earlier. So next step is to put our bolts through the holes we drilled. We got our rubber washers or spacers underneath there. Now we'll take our nylock and our backup plate, and I'll hand tighten one on each of the bolts we just put through the trolling motor. Another thing to note is you'll notice there's sensor wires running right alongside where we're fastening this trolling motor down. Take great care not to damage those sensor wires, because if you do, your trolling motor will not operate properly. Unlike fender washers, these things are pretty substantial. Because these things have so much thrust on them, fender washers will have a tendency to cup or get concave, making your trolling motor loosen up over time. These things aren't going to bend, so make sure you use these when you're installing your Quest motor. So with that, we're going to go ahead and tighten up all our bolts. So it's a 9/16 box end wrench, and you can use a socket. I like to start everything with an impact. You'll notice it's a slow RPM. You don't want to get something that's really spinning fast, because that'll increase the odds of you gulling up your stainless steel nylocks to the bolts. After I'm done using the cordless impact, I always like to take just a manual ratchet and just double check the tightness of it, because you can usually get another turn and a half to maybe 2 doing it by hand. So our motor is securely fastened. Now we're going to go ahead and put our side plates back on that we removed earlier. So our next step in the installation process is install the prop on the motor. So obviously you have the prop, and in the hardware bag for the prop, you have a washer, a nylock, and a drive pin. On the prop shaft, or the end of the armature, there's a hole in there to accept the drive pin. You're gonna put it through the hole, and you want an equal distance on each side. On the back of the prop, it's slotted to accept that drive pin. Go ahead and slide it over the prop shaft, and if you turn it slightly, you'll feel it engage that drive pin. And then if you spin the prop by hand, you'll notice the armature shaft, or the prop shaft, is spinning. That'll tell you that the prop is properly engaged into that drive shaft. So that's done. We're going to slide our washer on. Dab of anti-seize on the threads. We'll preload the nylock. And then get the nylock finger tightened. From there, we'll take our 9/16 deep well and you'll feel the nut bottom out. Right there, we're fully tightened, bottomed out. Another thing you don't want to do is don't use a power tool on that. Always tighten the prop nut by hand. So the next step is we're going to run our Ethernet cord up the coil cord and attach it to the other end of the Ethernet cord that's stubbed out of the control box. By running this cord and attaching it to your trolling motor, that'll enable you to use the features of the one boat network when hooked to a compatible Humminbird sonar head unit. After securing the two ends together, coming out of the control box, in the owner's manual, it recommends to tie that Ethernet cable to the second loop of the coil cord and not the sonar cord. So they did supply a zip tie for that. We're gonna fasten it to the second loop of the coil cord. Remove the tag end. And then go down to cable management at the base of the motor. This Ethernet cord is 30 feet long. Depending on your one boat network configuration, that 30-footer might be going directly into a Humminbird sonar unit directly at the bow of the boat, or you might be running it through the boat to a 5-port switch box that might be underneath the dash or even at the rear of the boat. Either way, you're given plenty of options to do the installation the way you want it done. So continuing with our cable management, Minn Kota suggests putting a zip tie around our Ethernet cable and our sonar cable, but doing so just hand tightening and don't tighten anything up real snug so you don't damage anything. So obviously you can see that's loose, I can still spin it, but yet it's gonna keep everything nice and neat. So that's all the tighter I'm gonna go with that. We're gonna snip that tag end off. They also recommend to have a minimum of 6 inches of slack coming out of this coil cord. I like to go just a tad more, that's my personal preference. I'm gonna put one more zip tie loosely around the Ethernet and sonar cord. I can spin it, that's good. And I'm gonna put just one zip tie on our power lead wire coming out of the base of the motor. It's never a real good idea to run your sonar cable parallel with the power cord from your trolling motor. That's really the only place you're gonna have an intersection with the two. And if they're running perpendicular to each other, we shouldn't have any interference issues. If you do, just simply cut that zip tie and separate those wires, and that should eliminate any interference issues. But in past experience, that's worked out pretty good for me. You'll notice I'm not using a zip tie gun. And then the reason for that, when you use a zip tie gun, that'll snug these wires up tighter than I want them to. But the zip tie gun does get rid of any of the sharp burrs. You can eliminate that sharp burr by taking your side cutter and actually holding it down on the base of the zip tie and then cutting it off that way. And there's nothing there, there's no sharp burr there. So before we apply power to this trolling motor, we're gonna talk about the two wires coming out of the head unit. We extended the Ethernet cable, and then we have this 14-pin sonar cable. To complete the one boat network, this Ethernet cable is gonna go either directly into the back of a Humminbird sonar unit or into a 5-port switch box. This 14-pin will plug directly into a Solix or an Apex. However, this particular boat is gonna be getting Helix units. Because of that, we're gonna need some adapter cords, which are included with the trolling motor. So you have an Ethernet adapter dongle, which is gonna plug in to the Ethernet cord. So that converts the round Ethernet cord to the Helix Ethernet receptacle. The 14-pin sonar that will plug directly into a Solix or Apex is gonna get adapted using the MKR MI1 cable. That'll convert the 14-pin to a 9-pin, which will plug directly into the back of our Helix unit. We don't have the sonars mounted in this boat yet, so at this point, we're just gonna neatly coil up these cords until we do get the sonars mounted, then we'll do the final hookup with that. Our next step in cable management is to install the plug on this particular trolling motor. Most Minn Kota trolling motors out of the box come with 2 ring tongues on it. Because this boat has been pre-wired from the factory with the receptacle, we're going to use the plug that came with the boat and install the lead wires on that. This is a good plug, but Minn Kota also makes a great plug in the MKR28. Similar to the Minn Kota circuit breaker, that MKR28 plug and receptacle combo has been engineered by Minn Kota to meet the power demands that the Ulterra QUEST requires. Another thing to note, guys, is the conductor, gauge, and circuit breaker sizing table that's referred to in page 10 of your installation manual. This is a brand new boat. I already checked the wire coming from the battery box up to the back receptacle, and I know we're plenty good there. It's heavy enough wire. I don't need to change anything, but if you're doing this install on an older boat, that's something you're gonna wanna check into. This particular boat is gonna have a 24-volt power supply. Batteries are in. I already took my voltmeter or my multimeter, and I checked the pins on here. I know number 1 is negative and number 2 is 24 positive. On the back of this plug, you'll notice that there's 3, we'll call them sockets, I guess, that are numbered 1, 2, and 3. So number 1 is gonna be our battery negative, or the black lead. And number 2 is gonna be 24 positive, our red lead. I'm gonna slide the power leads through the plug cover, cut our ring tongues off, and strip back some insulation. This particular plug requires 2 barrels over the stranded portion of your wire just to keep that wire from spreading out when you're tightening the set screws on it. So we'll slide those on. And then insert the barrels in the wire into the back of the plug. Make sure everything is good and tight. And we'll go ahead and slide the cover over the plug itself. Plug's complete. We'll go ahead and plug it into the boat. So now that we got power on our Ulterra QUEST, the next step before you take this boat out on the water and start using your new trolling motor is to refer to the quick start guide for QUEST GPS enabled bow mount trolling motors. So very critical, the first step, there's 4 of them. The first step is to download the One Boat Network app. Whether it's an Android or an Apple phone, you go on the appropriate store and download that free app. Once the app is downloaded, you're gonna wanna pair your phone to the trolling motor. So in your device, this happens to be an Apple phone, we're gonna go into our Bluetooth settings. Right now it's searching for other devices. While it's searching for other devices, you're gonna press and hold the pair button on the top of this trolling motor. Right there, Minn Kota Controller 4.0 popped up. I'm gonna click on that. You'll notice we had a steady tone when we were holding that pair. Once it connected to my phone, it gave me a 3 or 4 beep signal telling me that the trolling motor is now paired to my device. So with that, we're gonna go back into the One Boat Network app. And here's the functionality of that trolling motor right now. You'll notice it tells you right now the motor is stowed. So once that motor is deployed, we'll have the ability to steer left or right, turn our prop on, increase or decrease the speed. Once that process is done, the other thing you're going to want to do on your device is step number 2 in your quick start guide, and that's to perform the keel offset procedure. And what that does is it aligns the built-in heading sensor of the trolling motor with the keel of the boat, just to give you more accurate spot lock and jog features. Step 3 of the quick start guide is to program the One Boat Network button on your foot pedal. You'll notice there's a button here that's fully programmable with the app you just installed on your phone. By default, that button is programmed for autopilot. But you're not limited to just autopilot. You could program it to deploy shallow water anchors, whether it's a Talon or a Raptor. Step 4 of the quick reference guide is to designate the lower unit park position. Out of the box from the factory, your trolling motor is programmed to have the prop on the port or left side of the trolling motor. If you need that orientated so the prop is on the right-hand side, what I've seen the most in the field is that it's the covers. So to do that, you can orientate that park position so the prop is on the right-hand side, and then your cover will fit the way it should. And also, be sure to take a minute to register your trolling motor at minnkotamotors.com to stay up to date on information regarding your trolling motor. You can also enter your trolling motor's serial number to quickly and easily connect with Minn Kota's customer service and other helpful features. To find your serial number, it's conveniently located on a sticker on the front inside portion of the aluminum extruded base plate. So you'll notice on the front of the trolling motor, we have a wire here that there's nothing hooked to it. That's for your foot pedal. It's just a 4-pin connection. One end is threaded. And that just by simply fastening those two, now you have full foot pedal functionality with your trolling motor. One thing to note on the Ulterra QUEST foot pedal is there's a mode button here. When you push that mode button, you'll get a white light that comes on the upper left-hand part of the foot pedal. That tells you your foot pedal is in Ulterra mode. What Ulterra mode does for you is with 2 pushes of the foot pedal button, you can deploy that motor. Now I pause it because I don't want it to fold all the way down because we have a trailer in the way. But let's just, for example, if that motor did go all the way down, then you have the ability to trim that motor up or down using the left and right buttons on the bottom of the foot pedal. Once you get it to the desired depth, you press your mode button again, the white light will turn off, and now you have prop functionality. You have steering left and right functionality with the bottom 3 buttons. Your foot pedal, you have toe down and heel down for left and right steering, as well as a momentary button on the top of that foot pedal. So we mentioned a number of different ways to control your Ulterra QUEST via the foot pedal, a Hummingbird head unit, as well as the phone app, but it also comes with this pre-programmed, already synced to your trolling motor wireless remote control. Lots of neat functions on it. There's 3 one-boat network programmable buttons that you can actually program to do certain functions on this or other Hummingbird Minn Kota products, whether it's deploying shallow water anchors, spot lock, all kinds of cool features on this thing. Nice thing that comes with the remote is this laminated 2-sided quick reference startup guide and user guide that you can conveniently put in the glove box of your boat and reference it whenever you need help. So that concludes the installation of our Minn Kota Ulterra QUEST. I hope you guys found some of the tips and tricks I shared with you helpful in your installation. And if you have any questions, be sure to refer to your installation manual.